Who am I? My name is William Trenholm Fleming. I am the seventh child of Mrs. Margaret Mabel Fleming. I am the only male child of the Fleming clan. Oh my God. Can you imagine? You must feel sorry for me already. That's who I am. So I was brought up in a family of 8 women, and I was probably at the far end of the table, which shows why I'm the size I am now. I was born on December 14th, 1933, and grew up and spent most of my life up until I was in my 40s in Ottawa. It wasn't the high-class side of Ottawa, but it wasn't the slums either, my mother's side of that. Ottawa at that time was, it was a fairly small town atmosphere. Even though it was the capital of Canada, it was very small town. It was very archaic in its views as far as drinking and smoking, whatever you did, because at that time there was Timothy Eaton's store downtown, and Timothy Eaton didn't believe that you were even allowed to window shop at that time, and so he had these big drapes put up that he could close the windows, so when you went on a Sunday stroll, you weren't looking at a commercial product to buy. You were supposed to be in church. You weren't allowed to play cards on Sunday. There was absolutely no drinking on Sundays. For women to smoke out on the street, wow, that was a big no-no. It was very prim and proper, so to speak. It was kind of a, what do you call it when you know, there's an untruth to the atmosphere. I guess a phoniness, because people acted differently inside their homes than they did out on the street. I guess that's my explanation of Ottawa. Okay, my father left us when I was 5 years old, but prior to that, we lived in a walk-up apartment on Gladstone, the corner of Gladstone and Bank, and it was a 3-story deal, and I think we were on the top floor. I'm not sure which, but either second or third floor. And one day the police came and rapped on the door, and they came in and they wanted to search the house. And first thing they did was went to a closet, and it was floor to ceiling, wall to wall. It was stuffed with gallons of paint. So it was a lot of money, a lot of paint. Anyhow, they arrested him, and he was sent to jail. And the next time I heard about my father was when he left, I guess. I really don't, I don't have any memory, except I do remember after Gladstone Avenue, then we went and we rented a place on Frank Street, and on Frank Street there was this back shed full of rats. Oh, I can remember that distinctly. But also there, my mother was sick, and there was a knock on the door, and there was moving guys, and I guess the sheriff, and they came and they took all the furniture except for the bed my mom was on and a bread box. And if she hadn't been sick, they'd have taken that. So that was the beginning for my mother, to try to bring up the 8 of us. During the war, my mother was very, even though she was working and bringing up kids, she was very active in doing things for the war effort. And at that time, you saved, she opened up she started a club called Uncle Ray's Busy Bee Club. And Uncle Ray's Busy Bee Club had the sponsorship of the local paper, the Ottawa Citizen. And what we would do is we would first of all, we would save the tin foil out of cigarettes, and we would cut cartoons, jokes out of magazines like Life magazine or Liberty, whatever, and we'd paste them into a big folder type of magazine, and it would be a book of all just jokes. And then we'd send that off to the hospital where the soldiers were recuperating. And we also did knitting. And I even knew how to knit. I knit squares for, I think you call them Afghans, which is a blanket. And that was for the soldiers to use when they were recuperating. So we all chipped in, and neighbors' kids came, and there was a woman whose name was Uncle Ray. It was a nom de plume, I think is what you call it, or whatever. And Uncle Ray would come to the meetings, and the next day it would be in the paper, the local paper, that Uncle Ray's Busy Bee Club met and did such and such a thing, and Trenholm and all his sisters were doing this with the neighbors, and anyhow, that's the sort of thing we did. Now, but you know what? My mother still needed help financially, because she didn't get very much money from my father, and she worked in the government, but the government didn't pay a lot, even though they worked a 6-day week at that time. And so she got this idea of making whisk holders. A whisk is a little broom, right? And of course, in the kitchen, most homes had a whisk, but they didn't have a place to hang them. So she made this little pocket thing out of corks from Coke bottles or Pepsi bottles or whatever. Somehow she put these corks on I don't know how she held them together, but she made a pocket thing for whisks. Now, in order to get these corks out, you could do it one at a time and pick them out. But my sisters and I discovered, and we discovered it together very early, that we could take about 10 or 15 corks, line them up on the streetcar tracks. Streetcar would go blum, 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 and we'd go and pick them up, and all the corks would be all the cork portion of the cork would be out. And we saved a lot of time. So whenever my mother wanted to make these, we would gather them up. We always saved corks from bottle caps. That's a better explanation. We always saved bottle caps year-round. But then when she decided she was going to make these again, then we take the bottle caps, put them down, and it would pop the corks out. I think that explains it a bit better. And then we, as kids, would go, the 7 of us, because my older sister was gone then, we would go around the neighborhood selling them. And we'd come back, and that's how my mom subsidized. But she also made different things. She made these little, out of apple baskets at the time, she made these little bassinets for dolls and things like that. And we sold them. She made little mittens that fit over knitting needles. And she did all kinds of things. And she used us as salespeople. And because what better than a snotty-nosed little kid at the door, almost in tears, would you buy my wares? It worked. So my mother, in a way, was an entrepreneur. We would take, our favorite thing to do was take 2 tin cans and cup our hands over the top of the tin cans and get down on our hands and knees and pretend we were horses, and we'd clop the sidewalk, making a clippity-clop sound with the tin cans like horses, and we'd whinny like a horse, and we did that every day, day in and day out. When I was 5, 6 years old, we did. That's the sort of thing we did. There was a park across the street from us, and it had swings and it had slides. And actually, my younger sister Beverly, she got very badly hurt with a swing. It put a gash in her forehead about, I'd say it was about 1.5 inches long, really wide open, and she was bleeding pretty badly. To this day, she still has a scar from it. So we had the park. Later on, the sort of thing we did, when you're asking about street hockey or that sort of thing, yes, we played street hockey, and we played it under a lamp. At that time, there was like an X of wires going from one corner to the other corner, and a light. There was a big globe light that hung in the center, and so we could play street hockey at night. And but we didn't have a puck, So we would gather up horse balls, horse manure, and we'd use horse balls as a putt because they'd be frozen solid, and they hurt when you got hit. So we just we stuffed paper or a magazine down our socks stacked as a shin pad. And we had the light, and of course every time a car came along, which wasn't very often in these days, there weren't that many cars, then we'd yell car, and I've seen it advertised on TV. They're kids playing road hockey, and all of a sudden they yell car, and that brings back memories because that's what we did. My sisters used to send me to the drugstore to get women's things. Of course, I was too young, it didn't make any difference to me, and I would go and buy them their women things, whatever it was. And at that time, you could buy a package of 4 cigarettes in a little flat, you've probably seen them even. And they would always give me a nickel or whatever it took, 10 cents. And I would buy a package of those cigarettes. And I'd bring them their stuff, and then I'd take my wagon, and we lived across the street from the park. I swear I was only about 6, 7 years old, maybe 7. And I would also get matches. Matches at that time came in a box. They were little wooden matches. I'd tilt my wagon over on its side, and I'd get down in beside it and light the cigarette and smoke it, because our house was right across the street. Well, you know, as a kid, you don't think. There's smoke coming up out of there. You're having a cigarette. Your mother can't see you smoking the cigarette, but she can sure see the smoke coming up. So I forget what the consequences were, but I used to take these cigarettes and I'd hide them under the mattress of the bed. Didn't matter which bed, because, well, I went looking for them one day and they were gone. My mother never said a word to me, but I never smoked again until later years, because I thought, oh, well, I got away with it this time, and that's it. That was it.